This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, seaQuest, DSV, Season 1, Episode 0.
I'm warning you, if you don't surrender right now, I'm going to use every resource on this boat to bring you down. And I'll succeed. Oh, we found your virus. It's over.
You want to kill me, don't you? The warrior in you want to taste a little blood? Isn't that funny? I kill for power. You kill for peace. We're just different sides of the same coin. Each heroes to our own causes. Well, let's see who gets the parade.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast, no suit, skin. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
You know what? I like when you do things like that because it always takes me a second to realize what you're doing. And I was like, oh, is Luke being funny? I'm like, he's a dolphin.
Clearly, I'm a dolphin.
Do you know that's a robotic dolphin in every single scene?
I looked that up too. I also had thought it was a real dolphin, but it's actually just a robotic dolphin. Looks great.
It's a stupendously good model of a dolphin. It's honestly, it's unbelievably good.
Honestly, I felt so much better after I realized it was a robot because I felt so bad that they used a real dolphin. I'm like, no, it's just a really good robot dolphin. But I would have never known. I would have never known just looking at it.
I thought the same thing because there's a scene later on in the episode we're going to talk about where they sort of strap essentially like an oxygen tank type thing onto the dolphin. I was like, oh, that poor thing. And then later I'm like, it's a robot. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have sentience.
You do whatever you want to it. It doesn't care.
Exactly.
Well, we're starting off our best of speed run of seaQuest DSV this week. So as you can tell, we're going to be talking a lot about a robot dolphin.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Luke, do you think the show has the best logo / font we've ever seen?
I mean, I don't think so, but I guess you do?
Oh, come on. It's got C and then the word quest. The quest, the Q is like the tail of the Q, I guess you call it that, is like a shape like a, what do you like, a manta ray?
Right. Doesn't it like hammerhead sharks swim into the logo and become part of the logo or something?
It's like a hammerhead shark. Anyways, I was like, what a great logo. And then I wondered, is this our best logo? But I mean, I can't think of another one. I mean,
it's a very evocative one. Certainly, I think it stands out.
Yeah, it stands out. Anyway, maybe I'm too excited about the logo.
Before we get into it, let's do a little housekeeping in case people aren't familiar with us doing these speed runs of the best ofs. So what we're going to be doing here for seaQuest is we're not going to watch the whole thing. It's just too many episodes. It would take us years to get through it.
Well, it wouldn't take years, but it's more time than we want to spend on seaQuest.
So what we're going to be doing is watching the pilot, the series finale, and the top 3 episodes of each season.
Yeah.
Now, how did we determine the top 3 episodes of each season? Terrible question, but I'll tell you. I took a lot of best of lists we found online. We looked around the web for them. We went on Reddit and saw what people were commenting on Reddit for the best episodes, social media, and then we took listener suggestions as to their favorite episodes. We sort of compiled that all into the Continuum Drag computer and had it spit out kind of what seemed to be, by general consensus, to be the top 3 episodes of each season. And in the rare case there was a tie, Jordan just picked.
And I'd be like, I like 7 over 9.
You like 7 of 9.
Yeah, that was all right. You know what's funny? Looking back at 7 of 9, she was a little bit of an insulting character to add to Voyager, wasn't she? I
mean, she was definitely a retool, but Jerry Ryan brought way more than anyone deserved to bring to that character.
I would agree. It was one of those things where now looking back as an adult, I was like, it was one of those like, hey, I know what you nerds like. Here you go. Here's a woman in a skin-tight outfit, nerds. That's what it seems like now. At the time, I was like, cool.
I mean, I think that was clearly the purpose of it, but, I think Jerry Ryan elevated that character. Voyager becomes better with her.
Good for her. And we'll see if that becomes a thing on seaQuest, if they just start adding sexy characters. By the way, they will.
Oh, spoiler, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's already pretty sexy with, what's his name from Jaws?
Oh, Roy Scheider? Yeah, I know.
He's too elderly to be on this show, right?
Well, it's funny because Roy Scheider, I love him. He's a great actor. And I was thinking of all the movies he's been in, like the 7-Ups and Jaws and Marathon Man and Sorcerer, all that jazz. And I was like, look at all those great movies. Then I realized those were all from about 1970 to about 1980. And then after that, I was like, I wonder what he did. And I looked at his filmography and I was like, ooh, those were slim picking years for him. So I think this was like a little bit of Spielberg being like, hey, I know the guy, and him being like, I guess I'll do a TV show, But yes, he is considerably older than you remember him. But like he still went another 20 years before he died.
And one last piece of housekeeping here. If you're not a regular listener, we have a mechanism with which we can escape a show, an escape pod, if you will, before the end of our viewing routine. And that is, if the series average for the show dropped below 5, after sort of we do 3 podcast episodes of this, we can then take the escape pod, abandon the show entirely. We don't have to watch the whole thing if it's too terrible to stand.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Jordan, now that we've jumped all over the place, why don't we actually get into old seaQuest DSV? Because it premiered on NBC in 1993, and I'm assuming you must have watched it when it was on.
I didn't, and I remember it being on, and I remember old Jonathan Brandis being like a real heartthrob on magazines, and I was like, what would I have been watching at this time? And you know what I realized? I was watching the show that was directly opposite this, which was the Adventures of Superman and Lois. What was that show called? Lois and Superman?
Lois and Clark?
Lois and Clark, maybe that one. Anyways, that was the show I was watching. That was opposite this.
Oh, that's very funny. I remember very specifically watching this show. This was like, I was sucked up in the media hype around it. I'm sure there was a huge campaign for it. This was, clearly a big show that dropped a lot of money into trying to get that Star Trek audience. And I was the prime candidate for that. So I was watching this, not Lois and Clark, apparently.
And on that note about the budget, this show looks really good. I would say like the production value is really high, and the special effects have held up really well. Like we've mentioned, the dolphin is one thing, but even I think it's like early CGI, it all looks pretty good.
I wouldn't call it that, but fair enough.
You don't think so? You didn't think it looked pretty good?
I did not think so, but they're trying.
I think for the time period, I think it's held up pretty well compared to some things you'd see at the time. Like, is it seamless? No, but I mean, go watch one of the Jurassic Park sequels. It looks worse than this.
Well, Jordan, you mentioned it earlier, but Steven Spielberg executive produced this series, and this is the second series that he's executive produced that we've watched. Can you think of what the other one might have been? The other Spielberg project?
Oh, was he an executive producer on that one where they get stuck on the planet?
Earth 2?
Yeah, Earth 2?
Strangely, no. That is an ambient entertainment project, but he's not an EP on it. The other EP show we watched that he had created was Invasion America, the animated show.
Oh, it's funny. I forgot about that show and that he was involved. Oh, yeah. What a weird thing to have EP'd, huh?
This or Invasion America?
Invasion America. What did they say? Yosh? What did they say? Yosh?
Yosh. Well, that was an original idea by Steven Spielberg, that one.
It's because it's what he says when he walks into offices. Yosh! And they go, oh, give him another $1 million.
But this series ran from September 12th, 1993 to June 9th, 1996. And typically, Jordan, part of this podcast is I'll tell you about what was happening in the world around the time this series was on the air. But especially recently, we've covered a lot of stuff in this kind of mid-90s area. Mm-hmm. So I've decided I'm going to tell you what happened in the world when the series seaQuest itself takes place, 2018.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty wonderful. Yeah. Okay, what happened in the real 2018?
So this is what was happening while Nathan Bridger was taking command of the seaQuest DSV.
Yeah.
They were all tuning in to watch the Winter Olympics, which were held in Pocheon, South Korea that year. Mm-hmm. And they were also worrying that Xi Jinping had made himself president of China for life.
Yeah, how'd that go?
I mean, he's currently still president of China for life.
Yeah. So we don't know. He's still alive.
You see, it went well for him. It worked out.
Yeah, it's gone well for him. Let's all agree.
NASA launched the TESS satellite, which is a transiting exoplanet survey satellite looking for exoplanets out in the universe for, I guess, us to colonize one day. I don't know what it's for, but I guess that.
Oh, I don't remember that one. I only ever pay attention when it's things that land on Mars and then roll over and they can't use it anymore.
You, as a human, you really only like fail videos.
I like NASA spilling $1 billion and then going, oh, we forgot about rocks.
This was also the year the seaQuest was probably sitting down all those royal heads, just like everyone in your family. They were so excited to watch the Prince Harry and Meghan Markle wedding.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it went well for them, I guess. They've made a lot of money.
They got a Netflix deal, I think.
There you go. They're producers.
You watched it, right? I'm sure you did.
No, I didn't. I think my mom did, though.
I assume you sat down with your mom with a big pot of tea.
No. She watched it, but I didn't.
They were also rushing to the box office to see the two big blockbusters that year, Black Panther and Solo, a Star Wars story.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of those Disney's pretending didn't happen.
They're fine. They don't care. They all happen. They don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, I guess. All Disney.
Also that year, Jordan, Greta Thunberg begins her climate activism.
Yeah, because she was only probably like 13 or something like that? She was very young.
Yeah, quite young. Mm-hmm. And seaQuest was taking a special little trip up to Canada because it became the second country in the world to legalize cannabis.
Yeah, and everything's fine. We've all been okay.
You notice how you say that for every single thing I say?
Is that right? I said everything's okay now?
It all worked out. Everything's fine.
Yeah, everything did work out. Everything's fine. It's like there's just flames behind me. I'm like, everything's fine, everyone.
And Jordan, because this is your favorite part of this little segment,
yeah,
we're going to talk about whether you can guess the best picture and the host of that year's Academy Awards, the 90th Academy Awards.
I'm not going to remember because I think I have checked out at this point. 2018.
Jordan, when did you check out of life? I'm curious. I think it was like 1998.
Yeah, it was around then. It was about late 90s. 2018 best picture would have been I can't even think. Oh, was it Moonlight?
It was not Moonlight. It was The Shape of Water.
Oh, The Shape of Water. Yeah. She falls in love with Seaboy.
And what about the host?
Oh, the host would have been how many times has Chris Rock done it? No one punched him then. I don't remember. I would say it was they dug up Johnny Carson and he did it.
It was Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel. He was still doing it back then.
Absolutely. He's done a lot of them, I think.
Wow. Good for him, I guess.
All right, Jordan. Well, enough preamble. Should we get into seaQuest?
Yeah, let's do it.
Here's the IMDb summary for Season 1, Episode 0, To Be or Not to Be. Captain Nathan Bridger is hauled out of retirement to command the new submarine seaQuest under authority of the United Earth Oceans Organization. His ship goes up against pirate forces commanded by Marilyn Stark, a former seaQuest captain who tried to instigate a war. And that was courtesy of Brian Bargenbrook.
That's actually pretty good. That's pretty much the like a condensed version of the episode. So well done. What was it, Jimmy?
Brian?
Yeah. Yeah, good job there, Brian.
I like that your brain just clicks into the last name you heard before the name you just heard now.
Yeah, and how much did you love the world building? I feel like that was up your alley. All the world building of what's been happening in the last 20 years of this show.
Honestly, I thought it was bad. I thought they did a bad
job.
Did
you? Was that right?
I thought they didn't give enough information, and the information they gave didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I didn't really think that. I thought it was okay. I thought they established what the world was. I mean, you didn't get a lot of details about how these organizations formed and stuff, but I was like, I don't know, I thought they set the ground fine. Like, I was like, I get it. It's a world. They've created a new, like, NATO or United Nations under the water. Okay, sure. Maybe
bad isn't the right thing. I thought it was a little weak. I didn't think they landed it very well.
Well, I'll say this. This is a hour and a half episode. So it's two 45-minute episodes. The first episode really is just setup. So if you judged it just on that first episode, it's just building blocks. Like there's a lot of, this is what the world is. Here's who the people are. Here's what the relationships are. Here's the geography of the ship. And then it's like, all right, now we're ready to get going by the second episode.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we'll get into it obviously, but I would also say they don't establish any relationships either.
Do you? No. I think there's hints of stuff. I think maybe I'm more forgiving than you are.
Well, I like that it opens with a speech by JFK.
Yeah, which is weird because it's like, this is the future. We're still talking about Kennedy?
Well, he's talking about how we're all from the ocean and our bodies are made up of salt, so, it all makes sense. And, of course, you remember where this famous speech was from.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
You don't remember the 1967 America's Cup dinner in Australia?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's where this is from. It's from him doing a speech before they did a boat race.
Oh, well, it had to be 1957.
No, I wrote down 67.
Well, Kennedy was dead by then, so
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I wrote down 67.
maybe in this world, Kennedy made it a few more years, and we'll still make his
They
speeches.
deep faked this real well.
But I have to say, the opening is like you said, it's this Kennedy speech, probably from 57, and it's like shots of the ocean and like orcas and dolphins, and it's just like really this great triumphant music to the opening. It really, if it's supposed to give you this feeling of like, I guess like the possibility of the world sort of thing.
Yeah, and then camera sort of dives in the ocean, gives you that great seaQuest logo you love.
Yeah, it was a good logo. I like it.
Did you see what the original title was going to be for the show?
Yeah, Deep Space.
I know you're going to dive in and be like, Deep Space. But Deep Space Nine beat them to it, so...
No, let me ask you though. seaQuest, obviously, like is seaQuest a good title for the show?
It's better than Deep Space, I think.
I think it's better than Deep Space, although I don't like the DSV. I think it doesn't add anything.
Well, just to give you, it's the ship's name, so it's just like,
Yeah.
That's what you're watching.
Yeah, but I mean, it's called Star Trek, not Star Trek USS Enterprise. Well, I guess they did call that show Enterprise. I'll take back what I said.
Anyway, it starts off with a submarine chase in the Livingston Trench. Some, quote, reef runner has been prospecting over territorial lines, and the submarines are basically chasing him, firing some torpedoes at him, trying to stop him, I guess, because he broke an international treaty. But he's able to like sneak back into his underwater mining base before he gets hit.
Yeah. You didn't love the Reef Runner? This seemed like, for me, I was like, Luke must be loving this weird little world building of like little names and stuff like that.
Honestly, I don't know. It just felt incomplete to me. It just wasn't. There was like didn't make sense. I'm like, I don't understand what any of this means, because like essentially what happens is he gets back to base, and the subs that were chasing him because he crossed some sort of territorial line prospecting are now calling in. I believe they call them warrior submarines, and essentially like a Bay of Pigs or style international incident is building at this like border, and I believe they say that all of the what do they call them?
Hornets?
Oh, the Hornets. But I was thinking about all the economic confederations in this area are preparing to go to war over this crossing of a border. I believe they're confeds is what they call them for short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like this, and I'm like, do I need to memorize all these different codes and stuff? I was like, I think it will all make sense.
And it's at this point that the news, like these people on this base are like hearing, like the news is happening live. Like this is all happening in about 45 seconds that they're about to go to war over this. Like every nation on the planet, apparently.
I would agree. I think what they're trying to do is create this idea that for future episodes, not only that there's this tension in the world, but that everything is high stakes under the water. However, you're right. It seems like everyone's maybe a little too trigger happy if like this one minor little incident is like, the world's going to war. It's like, okay, everyone, calm down.
And it's at this moment that the seaQuest arrives. It emerges out of Livingston Trench under the jurisdiction of NORPAC, which I assume is the North American Pact.
I think so, yeah. I'd have to look it up. And did you see what DSV stands for?
Deep Sea Vehicle?
It's Deep Submergence Vehicle, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I thought deep sea vehicle sounds. It was what I thought, but it was submergence. I wouldn't have thought that was the S.
Well, I mean, that's why you got to look at those acronyms, apparently. And it kind of becomes a standoff with DSV, the seaQuest, if you will, holding the other ships at bay and not receiving orders from command and wondering what to do. And the captain of the seaQuest, this Captain Marilyn Stark. It's not our hero yet. It's this other woman. She orders the plasma torpedoes and the thermonuclear warheads loaded into the torpedo bays just in preparation for what might be a war. Because she's tired of NORPAC's weak-kneed response to these other confeds alliances. She thinks they're too weak. So when the order comes in to stand down, she disobeys it, and she's going to bring about peace through force. She's going to start a world war.
So this brings up a couple questions I have, and this is specifically to you. This Captain Stark here, her name is Shelley Stark. No, Marilyn Stark, excuse me. Shelley's the actress. Marilyn Stark. We don't get a lot of time to establish her. No big surprise. She's going to come back later. She's going to kind of be our villain for this episode. Do you think there was enough? I mean, I think I know what the answer is, but do you think there was enough to establish why she's gone through all these ranks to make captain of this military organization, and this is the point where she's like, this is the straw that broke the camel's back for her, and then thus later on we see her as a villain? Does that make enough? Like, if you get fired, is that enough to make you like a Bond-esque villain? You know?
Here's the thing: is all the villains on this episode are like bad James Bond villains. Like, they suck.
I would agree. I would agree, but go further. I actually think it's one of the weaker parts of the show, because I think they treat it like an afterthought, which is a bit of a shame. But they're almost more like Steven Seagal bad guys. Like, there's literally a guy who's just got a ponytail, so you're like, he's a bad guy. And there's like another person, they're like, he's got like a scar on his finger, he's a bad guy. You're like, okay, guys, like, give a little bit of effort.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with her character right off the top here. I see what they're trying to set up, and it's a messy setup, but they're just trying to show you that, like, there's a lot of tension under the sea. This seaQuest at this point in time, which we'll see later, changes, but is mostly just a warship enforcing the law. And it's basically just like the police of the sea as run by North America. And she's just tired of not just like fighting. She's just like, let's just get it over with. Like, what are we all know we're going to war eventually. What are we waiting for? Let's just go. Right. Fine. I mean, we don't need a lot to know about our character to see, like, this is at least a setup for like the world they live in at this moment.
Yeah, and really the whole point is that she's going to get in sort of like butt heads with her commander, like a character we're going to learn is named Jonathan Ford, and he basically, what happens is you can see right off the bat that they have two very different ways of dealing with conflict and sort of crisis management, and it ultimately becomes him relieving her of her duty because she sort of orders to fire without any really any instigating incident that sort of would justify them firing.
Yeah, she disobeys orders to not fire. She's like, let's fire, and he does a little mutiny, just a little one.
Yeah, but the point is, he gets her off the bridge. I think they call it the bridge of the ship, I'm not sure. And then he relieves her of her command, and then we're like, 13 months later, we're like, oh, that was over.
He stopped a world war, and 13 months later, we're catching up with the seaQuest. The United Earth's Oceans Organization, or UEO, it's retrofitting the seaQuest to become a science and exploration vehicle, kind of leaving its war submarine in the past, that sort of like role it had in the past. And it's being headed up by Admiral Noyce. Noyce! Yeah. I'm Admiral Noyce.
Yeah.
Played by Tom Paris's dad, Admiral Paris on Voyager.
He was also in Seinfeld as well. He's just one of those actors you'd recognize his face.
And Admiral Noyce needs to find a new captain.
Yeah.
He wants to find someone who will be seen politically as non-military, and this is kind of where it comes in, that he's his old friend, the retired Captain Bridger. He's off in the Caribbean somewhere, but it's like he thinks he'd be the perfect choice, a man who can command, who knows the Navy, but doesn't really come off as like a military strong arm anymore.
Yeah, and we're going to learn the person. Yeah, it's this Nathan Bridger, this guy who wants, and we're going to find that he designed seaQuest as well. So like he'll know the ship, and he's a captain, and But what are we going to have to do to bring him back? But there's one thing that happens here. He's having this conversation. Noyce is having a conversation with Ford, and he says at one point, "I'm going to need you to help me convince him to become the captain." And he's like, "I'm going to need you to appear as incompetent as possible, so that he thinks he'll feel he has to become captain, so that like disaster doesn't occur." But that's not really what happens.
Yeah, this sort of plan they establish of just like Ford being incompetent, so that Noyce will get Bridger to take command. I don't know. Yeah, it never really comes back up. I mean, in some ways it comes back up, but it's only because of Ford's legitimate incompetence.
Yeah, it's like, well, again, what we're going to learn, and not spoil, is later, like, the scene where you think this is going to come back, it's like he actually just has, like, a bit of maybe some sort of kind of panic attack or anxiety attack or something like that, and that's the moment where we're going to see Nathan become the captain. We know he's going to because he's the face you recognize, but it is weird they kept this in the show. We're like, you got to do this thing, and I'm like, okay, well, that's never going to come back. Why even leave this line in the show?
Yeah, well, I mean, it just made you sit there waiting for it to happen, and it just never happened.
Yeah, anyways.
But yes, they're going to get Bridger, who of course is played by Roy Schneider.
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing that right?
Scheider.
Scheider, thank you. And he'd quit the Navy because his son had died, also a Navy man. And I think that clearly we know that affected him, the death of his son in the Navy. But also recently, he's been widowed as his wife has passed away as well. And he's been spending all his time in the Caribbean, living in a high-tech beach hut, teaching a dolphin named Darwin how to do sign language while he swims in the nude with a dolphin, I guess.
Yeah, it's a weird introduction to the character. I guess they're really trying to show that he is so far removed from his previous life, but then he's sort of not, because he's still doing these sort of science experiments of the sea. But I guess they want to have him, I don't know, with a beard so he can shave.
Well, it's kind of like, he's not a military man anymore. He's now a man of science. Other than teaching a dolphin sign language and like training it to do like things, is that all the science he's doing? Because he's got so many computers in his beach hut.
It is funny because when you see the beach hut, I thought there was going to be more to it, because they sort of arrive on the beach and he's hiding, and then I was like, oh, it's going to be something's going to happen here. He's going to like do an attack or something. But it's like, no. Then he just like walks in. He's like, hey guys. I'm not Nathan Bridger. And then it's just like wall-to-wall computers. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, clearly you are, because you're this scientist guy living on the beach. And then he's like, anyways, I am Nathan. I was like, I don't understand what any of this is happening.
Well, basically, it's a nice moment for us, the viewer, because Admiral Noyce, he comes to meet him. He's like going to convince him to take over the ship. And we get a whole bunch of world-building exposition here. This is what you were talking about earlier, is that at some point before 2018... the world started exploiting the resources of the ocean, and nations around the world began teaming up into these economic confederations, these confeds, to sort of protect their own sea borders, essentially. Mm-hmm. This led to farms and colonies being developed under the ocean, sort of like a parallel to space colonization, essentially. Though you have to wonder, just like, but why? Like, why would you need to live under the? I don't know, but
yeah, I guess it's that the resources have been sort of mined to a point where it's just like, well, there's one more thing to explore and exploit, and it's under the water. I kind of like, and again, maybe I'm more forgiving. I was just like, all right, sure, we just need to be underwater. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, all this is just like, how do we do Star Trek? But I guess our thing is it's under the ocean.
Yeah, it's just like, how do we go explore somewhere, but it's under the ocean? Anyways, resources. So don't worry about it so much. We're gonna get under it's gonna be a cool ship. You'll like it.
There's farms and colonies down there now. I mean, we could do those on the surface too, but they're under the water now.
Yeah, it's all just be like, don't worry, it's a cool ship. You'll enjoy it. Remember him from Jaws? Come on.
The UEO was formed to administer treaties and peacekeep. So you're right, sort of a NATO-y kind of organization.
Yeah.
And to help with that, the UEO was gifted by Norpact and a variety of rich donors with the ship, the seaQuest.
The seaQuest, yeah, that's right.
And Captain Bridger, obviously you said, was one of the designers, but he had quit the Navy before it was built, so he hasn't really had a chance to see it. And this is kind of what initially entices him off to Pearl Harbor to see the refit of the seaQuest. His first time seeing an idea he developed.
Yeah. So it's like he's like, no, I'm not going to become work on your ship, but he's like, but I will take a tour. And so then we cut to them giving a tour of the ship. I have to say this, and again, maybe I like this more than you did. Maybe a little bit clumsy, but I did like just at least getting a geography of the world we're going to be in on this ship, which is like, there's going to be this room and there's going to be this room. And you at least get to see kind of how it's all connected. I mean, I did think it's funny. There's a giant room where there's just a pool in the middle where there's a dolphin. It made me laugh. It was just, I'm like, yeah, keep going back to that room. Keep going back to the dolphin room.
No, trust me, they will.
Yeah, they will. Of course they will, because
yeah, as you
Darwin's
said,
the main
it
character.
really is just a great way to start a tour. We get to see some of the CG of like the little mini subs entering the porthole to the seaQuest. You're going to see seaQuest under the water. You know what? You're not entirely wrong. I think what works best about this CGI is that, like, because it's underwater, they're able to put like a murky filter over everything, so you don't have to look too closely at it. It's just all too smooth. That's the problem of early 90s things. Like, everything is just too smooth and angular, and they at least try to cover that up with some of these like seawatery murky shots.
Yeah, I would say the thing that at least I thought looked the worst was later on we're going to get like this type of like probe, and it's like controlled with your like hands, and it looks sort of like a robotic frog. I thought that was the thing that looked the worst. I kind of forgave all these, like you're saying, this overly smooth stuff, because I was like, everything kind of looks like a fish under the water. Sure.
But let's do a little tour of the seaQuest ourselves.
Yeah.
We get to see there's airlocks and cargo bays. That'll clearly be a set we'll return to. There are many, many hallways for walk and talk, so they can do something very similar to like Star Trek Next Generation, where they're just going to wander hallways with a little more of a submarine flair.
Yeah, this is a little bit less like warm lighting and carpeting and more, it looks more like a sub. There's like graded floors and sort of like iron barred walls and stuff. So it's a little bit more industrial looking.
The seaQuest is, of course, quite large. It has its own version of a turbo lift. It's called a maglev train, and instead of going up and down, it goes left and right.
I loved it. You know what it reminded me of? Remember that that series of Roddenberry pilots we watched that had that little train thing that went across the world?
Yes, of course. The what was it? Earth 2 or Second Earth, or whatever it was called.
That's right. And it was a similar sort of thing. I think it's really fun. I don't know how it's useful in the show at all, other than just like something visually for like a different place for people to have conversations. But I thought it was funny that the ship is so big they have to take this essentially train from one side to the other.
It's so big. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
They have a bridge which is quite large and open concept. It actually kind of was like, in my head, it looks like a precursor to the Battlestar Galactica remake bridge. Very open, lots of tables, like obviously people in chairs, but it just feels like a big military bridge.
Did you notice the weird things? And I don't think they had them in every scene, but it seemed like on the bridge they had these sort of like cylindrical sort of screens people were looking on. They almost look like big bubbles. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't see that, but I can believe it. So it's sort of like
a dome.
A dome, yeah. I guess maybe that's a submarine thing.
Yeah, maybe it is. Anyways, I was like, that's kind of a different looking screen. I'm into it.
And the seaQuest has 3 Whiskers, WSKRS, wireless knowledge retrieval satellites. And they're essentially just little autonomous drones that are always floating around the ship. They're kind of look interesting. Like whenever you see the exterior of the seaQuest, there's always these like 3 bright lights like flying around. And I think they're supposed to just be drones. They just operate around the ship, just bringing information. They're sensors essentially.
Yeah. And the fact they call them Whiskers made me laugh. I loved it. That's a point.
Did you like that they were each had a name?
Did they each have a name?
Yeah. One was called Mother, one was called Junior, and one was called Loner.
I missed that.
Very odd names. They also have a hyper-reality probe, which is what you're describing earlier, the thing that looks like a frog, but it's essentially just a VR helmet and gloves that lets you like remote pilot a drone, which was very funny because it's not dissimilar to if you watch someone flying a drone these days. It's the exact same thing. You just like put on a headset and like you can just kind of see where your drone's flying.
Yeah, and you know they're going to use it later, and it looks fun. It's just like the one person who puts it on, it's Lieutenant Commander. What was her name? Hitchcock, Lieutenant Commander Hitchcock. She sort of puts on these goggles, headset, and these like power gloves to guide the thing. And I was like, sure, that's fun.
Yeah. I thought it was very prescient because I'm just like, I see people do this all the time now on YouTube. Like this is just the normal technology now.
So you're saying they invented this technology is what you're saying?
I am saying that.
Yeah, good for them. They knew it was going to happen in 2018.
seaQuest saw it coming, but they thought it would be under the water, but we all agreed that underwater is stupid, so we don't go there.
Everything is under the water.
They've also turned a missile prep room into a research area with these cool moon pools you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't exactly know how this would work for their research, but I guess they pull in parts of the ocean they're in, or it's just an directly open part to the ocean. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but you need a lot of water. You're under the water, so you need more water on the set.
It's a way to have the dolphin character Darwin always come in and have a conversation with them. That's what it's for.
Yeah, because the ship, as by Nathan's design, is full of tubes of water in which a military-trained dolphin can swim around the ship. It was always designed to have a crew with a dolphin on it. Like, this has always apparently been part of the plan for seaQuest.
Don't you love that? There's like a hint of, and I think it's unintentional, but there's sort of a hint that Nathan's a little bit crazy. You know what I mean? It's just like, they're like, so, sorry, we're going to build this? He's like, yeah, there are these tubes for the dolphin. They're like, all right, sounds good to me.
And as you mentioned, Darwin is there. He's always going to be there. We knew that from the moment we watched the show because we remembered that Darwin the dolphin's a big star of it. But we suddenly see Darwin is in this moon pool and, Bridger's surprised to see him there, and Admiral Noyce was just like, yeah, we went ahead and kidnapped your dolphin for you and brought him on board.
Yeah, so what it is, he's basically like, oh, you have a dolphin, like, as my specs, that you can have a dolphin. He's like, wait a minute, this is my dolphin. And I was like, wow, he recognized that real quick. I don't know if I would notice my dolphin. They all kind of look the same.
He didn't recognize him at first. I was actually surprised. I'm like, you don't recognize your own dolphin?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but something tipped him off. It was maybe when he went swimming with him naked again.
Well, what happened is this dolphin, this Darwin who's been kidnapped and brought here, which also, where was he? Like, they just flew in. Like, was he on the plane they were on? He just didn't notice?
I think seaQuest, they had a quick little diversion for seaQuest, went over to where he was, got him into the boat, then drove it over. Why they couldn't have put Nathan on there, I don't know.
All right. It all makes sense to you.
It all makes sense. The point is the dolphin's on board, Luke.
But what we learned very quickly here is that this dolphin can talk because seaQuest has its own Wesley Crusher, a child genius named Lucas Wallenjek.
Yeah, there's a couple things I'm going to mention. First, it's funny you say Wesley Crusher because this show, whether it was intentional or otherwise, I'm going to say it probably was intentional. There are real shades of Star Trek The Next Generation. If you kind of start comparing some characters, not all of them, but yes, he's very much a Wesley-type character. The Doctor, which we're going to meet, is very much a Beverly Crusher-type character who's going to have this, clearly they're setting up sort of will they, won't they with the captain, similar to Picard. There's very much like, hey, you guys like Star Trek, right? We're going to give you the same sort of thing. Don't worry about it. But our Wesley's much cuter.
Yes, he's a real 90s heartthrob, this Jonathan Brandis. I'd forgotten about him until I saw him. I'm like, oh, I remember this guy. He was all over those teen magazines.
Yeah, and I'll say a couple things. Obviously, we don't need to dwell on it. Obviously, he didn't have a very happy end to his life, but he's wearing a Florida Marlins jersey. And I don't know if you noticed this, Luke, but they're now the Miami Marlins, but then it was Florida. And he has on the back of it, it says World Series winners 2010. And I knew they had won the World Series. I was like, did they predict it? Did they predict it? But they were off, unfortunately. They won in 97 and 2003. But it probably was a crazy idea. In 1993, they're like, maybe by 2010 this team will win. But they won in 1997. So
they didn't have enough faith in the Marlins. The Marlins did it twice and much sooner.
And much sooner. Yeah, it was only a few years later. But anyways, I did think that was funny when they have little bits like that.
Well, Lucas Wallencheck, he's a Nepo baby.
He is, that's true.
His dad is paying for a large part of the seaQuest as a wealthy industrialist or whatever, just a rich guy apparently. And as part of his payment for seaQuest, this peacekeeping ship that's getting paid for by rich people from North America, he said, let my son live on seaQuest, please now.
Yeah, because he's also having he's, I don't know, having some sort of rebellion or something. So he's acting out. So we'll just put him on the ship. Now I'll say this. I'm a very different age than I was when this show aired. I don't know if my feelings would have been different, but I do find him to be the most annoying character on the show. But it's just, I think, because he's just that, ain't I a stinker teenager? And I'm like, I don't know, go get a job.
Jordan, name one time you saw a kid on a TV show that you weren't annoyed by.
It's true. It's true. It's a hard character to do. And I actually don't think he's bad at it. It's just that the character's sort of like that knowing wink of ain't I a stinker? And I'm like, you're really annoying.
I mean, I think it's too hard. I think kids' characters are hard. I think they're even harder for you.
I think, it's just look, he's got a great head of hair. He's a cute kid. Good on him. And his character basically is that it's more than he's a Nepo baby. Because, of course, Luke, as you know, with any nepotism, if you actually have any talent, it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter how you got to third base, right? So he's a genius, and his main claim to fame on this ship, at least to this point, is that he has created a technology that allows humans to speak to the dolphin, and thus also the dolphin to speak back through this series of kind of walkie-talkie headphone type things.
Yeah, it's a very classic 90s trope. Reminded me very much of 90s movie Congo, where it's just a weird robot voice is given to an animal.
Yeah, Amy, go, Amy. Remember that?
This time it's no suit, skin, no suit, skin.
Luke, I don't know if you know this. You were so spot on this dolphin. This is a talent I didn't know you had. It sounds exactly like him.
It's so weird. Why is that the voice they gave the dolphin? Why is it so squeaky and annoying?
You want it to be like Sean Connery or something?
I mean, you could have given the dolphin any voice, but that was the choice you went through.
Yes, I would agree, because we're going to see another technology which is dumb, but I think is very fun, which is the waterfalls screen thing we're going to see later. Why that thing can sound like anything you want and look any way you want, but this thing has to have this silly robotic voice, I'm not sure, but it's just because we want to be able to know that it's a dolphin speaking. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It was very funny. I was just sitting there being like, I mean, it sounds like a dolphin, I guess. It still has the like high-pitched tones of a dolphin, so maybe they were just trying to match those, but it just made me laugh. I'm just like, could have been anything. Could have been anything, and this is it, eh?
You know what it should have had? Because it's speaking English, it should have some sort of dolphin accent. They should have come up with whatever the dolphin accent would have been speaking English.
Yeah, that would have worked out just fine, right?
It's like somehow immediately offensive. I don't know how, but it just seems like it just would offend.
You just want it to be the Jar Jar Binks of seaQuest.
You know what? It's not that far off.
At any rate, this is how we're introduced to sort of the idea that
Yeah.
on this ship, there's also going to be this amazing talking dolphin, which, let's be fair, it's kind of fun. Like, I think that
Yeah.
was the whole pull of the original seaQuest is like, this dolphin's on it, it's going to be talking.
And as we said before, it looks great. Like, I think now that you know it's a robot, you'll kind of sense its movements and stuff. But like, this makes like Jaws look like amateur hour.
It is true. It is the, like, almost the height of this show is that, like, once you realize there's robotic dolphins there, you're just like, this is the thing you should be remembered for, correctly so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
At any rate, that's sort of the tour of the ship we get. We get to see it all. And then Captain Noyce introduces Bridger to that Commander Ford, who is going to be the executive officer on the ship. And he's just like, Ford, you finish the tour for me, okay? And as soon as Captain Noyce or Admiral Noyce walks away, he sends an order for the ship to leave port, and Bridger is essentially shanghaied out to sea.
Yeah. It is funny, and there's a series of things that they kind of do in this show like this, where it's like they really want to establish that Nathan wants to get back and he doesn't want to be the captain. I almost feel like they pulled it a few too many beats. Like, we as a viewer, we know he's going to be the captain, and we know this is sort of his the hurdle he needs to get over is his personal feelings. He's going to be the captain. But it's like they just seem to do it too many times, at least for me, which is like, he's stuck out to sea, get me back. Because they're like, then this thing happens. He's like, get me back. Then this thing happens. He's like, I'm not going to be the captain. And I'm like, okay, like, you're just going to be the captain. Let's just get it going.
But yes, now that he's stuck at sea because they can't turn around and go back immediately because the seaQuest, I don't know, is the length of like a city or something. I have no idea.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, well, I'll stick around. I'll help with a few glitches, and let me go check out the berth you set up for me. And it's here they introduce another piece of seaQuest technology, an AI hologram whose job it is to advise on moral or ethical conflicts.
It was really weird, right? They want to have, I think, a mix of a holodeck also mixed with like Star Trek's computer. So I think they were like, what we'll do is our own thing. And I have to say, I think it's a cool idea because what you basically see is like a waterfall that falls from the ceiling in
it's like
sort of like you'd see it like a restaurant.
Mist or a smoke coming down in like a screen, basically, and then a projection onto that mist.
And there's like a older British gentleman is the program that Lucas, old cutie poi, he came up with this project. So it's the face he has, and I think he says, you can make me look or sound like anything you want. But yes, I don't know exactly how they're going to use this. I think it's sort of for scenes where they want Nathan so instead of him doing like a monologue, he has someone to talk to if he's coming to a decision by himself. I think that's how they're going to use it. But yes, they were like, for moral decisions, I'm like, okay.
Insane use of an AI. Like, it's just like, Star Trek has a computer. What if we had one too? But it just listens to his problems and gives him like moral advice. I'm like, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to trust ChatGPT with that, but okay.
But later on, and I don't think this is spoiling anything, we see Nathan put in a picture of his wife, because again, we mentioned his wife died, and near the end of the episode, he'll put a picture of her, and she gets like animated, but she doesn't really do anything, but it's using that same technology. Am I led to believe that if he wanted, he could have his ex-wife, he could have her, like, her image, like, be the person that he has conversations with?
Yeah, they say specifically you can scan any photo you want into it to be the avatar.
Yeah. I mean, that would be weird. It would be weird to have your dead loved one speak to you.
No, then you don't ever have to let go and grieve. No problems.
I think,
no problems.
I think it's a little messed up.
But yeah, this is another piece of technology on the ship. At any rate, now that he's been trapped on the ship, he's out to sea, he's going around, and this is when we get a chance to sort of, for the most part, meet most of the crew. Some of them we've met. We've met the Kid Genius. We've met the Executive Officer Ford. We've obviously met Admiral Noyce, who I don't think is going to be a regular character, but is clearly going to come back occasionally, I would assume. But let's talk a little bit about the other people on the ship. You mentioned her earlier. There's Dr. Kristen Westphalen, very much the Beverly Crusher of the show. She's the head of science on the ship. And as soon as they meet, it's such a meet cute. It's such an obvious, like, romantic foil for him. But clearly this no-nonsense scientist is going to fall head over heels for Captain Nathan Bridger.
Yeah, it's basically just I'm a scientist and you can't tell me what to do, military, and because I do science. And I thought, I'll give the show credit with this. I think they at least set up that they, I believe, want some sort of light tension between the military and the scientists, that there's always going to be these two groups that have to sort of work together through problems. And I think they do an okay job setting that up. And I think she's sort of the voice of that in this scene.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a great read of it. Actually, it's one of the more interesting dynamics that the show might have.
Yeah. And now, if we're talking about other characters, I don't know what order you're going, but there's a character, and I don't know if I'm reading this wrong. There's a character called, which is the one who's like, he's in charge of like getting stuff and morale.
That is Lieutenant Benjamin Krieg. He's the supply and morale officer.
Yeah, and now I'm happy to be wrong, but did you the first thing you thought, and maybe it was the same as I thought? I was like, Quark? Are they doing a Quark character?
Yeah, he's Quark. He's 100% Quark. Okay. He's more annoying Quark.
Well, it's only been an episode. We don't know. You always have to give people a little bit of credit or a little bit of leeway on the pilot because things might change a little bit. So.
He gets more scenes than probably any other secondary character does. I would say most secondary characters are lucky if their name is said. He at least gets a bit more characterization, and that's mostly because for Bridger, there's a connection there. Krieg used to know Bridger's son. They went to the academy together, and so they are able to have a little bit of a nice conversation about how much Bridger's son loved him, and like that he was always talking about him to Krieg, sort of give a little connection between the two of them.
Yeah.
But it is an odd sequence because, as you said, he's also a bit of a wheeler-dealer Quark. So the scene also starts off with Krieg complaining about not getting enough adult movie discs. So now he's going to have to share his personal collection of pornography with the crew?
Yeah, I don't know if you can chalk this up to a joke of the time or just like a not great joke overall, but it didn't land. Like, it was one of those things where I was like, ooh, this could be a hard scene to come back from, my friend.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. And I mean, they do call them adult movie discs, so maybe they just meant like more adult films because they said they were getting too many family films. But the tone of it was just like wink, wink.
What you mean? There's a possible implication that these are just like prestige films. They're a little harder. Yeah. You really got to pay attention.
It's like, we got to get these Oscar winners on, or I'm going to have to share my copy of Citizen Kane with the crew.
It's all the Criterion Collection he was looking for.
And Lieutenant Krieg, he has a connection to someone else on the ship. His ex-wife works there, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Hitchcock, the chief engineer.
Yeah, and I have to say, I don't know this actress. Her name is Stacey Hayduke. She has the most startling eyes ever. It's like, I was like, is she wearing contacts? I've never seen someone. She's got like Ray Liotta blue eyes.
Remember you were talking about Marilyn Cotard's eyes as well the other day?
Maybe I'm falling in love with these characters, perhaps.
You're a real eye man.
I'm a real eye man, that's true. But she does have lovely eyes. I mean, say what you will.
She doesn't get much to do in the pilot. When we're introduced to her, she's a bit gruff with Bridger because she doesn't know who she is, and then she's apologetic. We get to see her use the hyper reality probe a little bit. But other than being maybe a little bit of a hard ass, you don't get much sense of her character at all.
I would agree. Yeah, I don't know we don't really know much about her other than I think she's sort of like the straight-laced, follow rules kind of person. But she was fine. Like, the actress was fine. The character was fine. There's just not a lot to grab onto at this point.
Yeah, there's a couple guys on the bridge who I think are going to be regular characters. One of them is Ted Raimi, the actor, which I was happy to see. I love seeing Ted Raimi in things. he's some sort of comms officer. He really gets very little to do other than like pass information along. And there also is the chief sonar operator, a character whose name I forget. I don't believe it's even said in this episode, but he appears to be their sensors officer. He pops up for a few minutes too, but they're very negligible in the background, just kind of like taking up space on the bridge, basically props in the pilot.
Yeah, and I would say almost mostly Ted Raimi's character. It's just like, I think he might have like 2 lines of dialogue in this.
And then there's the military police on the ship, Chief Manilow Crocker, who's an old Navy pal of Bridger. So there's a little bit of back and forth where they make like some, inside jokes between each other and like josh around a bit. But that's the most we get to see of him.
Yeah, I think it's just really to have Nathan will have a bit of a, if not a confidant, someone that's on his side that, again, they can have conversations and get the plot going in an amiable fashion.
Yeah, another old guy on the ship, even though this guy's probably 20 years younger than Schneider. Scheider. Anyway, we'll get back to the plot, because they're now out at sea. We've done a tour. We've sort of met some of the characters, though, in passing mostly. And it's at this point that Bridger's called to come to the bridge because they're receiving a communication about an underwater power station being attacked and requesting help. And this is something we haven't talked about yet, Jordan. But in the background of this episode, in the cutaways when they leave the seaQuest, what we've been learning about is kind of the bad guys, the sort of what the A-plot's going to be of the episode, is that these full-on James Bond villains have been plotting. And the main villain is a guy named George Lechen of Lechen Industries, who inexplicably has a French company but a German accent. We've seen a few shows like this where they have these sort of like throwaway villains and stuff. He's so generic. It's like, I don't even remember what his face looked like. And also he's in this scene where we learn he's the bad guy, and at the very end of the episode where obviously Nathan and co win the day, we go back to him and he's like, "Oh, drat." And I was like, "Who's that guy again?" I'm like, "Oh, he was the bad guy. I only saw him one scene ago, 45 minutes ago." He reminds me of the bad guys in that TV pilot we saw for Nick Fury. Just like generic, weird Germans with ponytails. Yeah,
it's again, I would say you may not feel the same way. I think it's the weakest thing of the show is that they were just like, it's such an afterthought because they need this conflict. And it's like, you guys have taken an hour and a half of our time. You could give them a little bit of character.
Lechen, he used to exploit the resources of the ocean for his company. He got rich off of, I guess, going underwater and taking resources. But ever since the UEO started enforcing international treaties and borders or something, he's just been losing revenue because I don't understand exactly.
He's bad, Luke.
He's bad.
He's bad. He's bad, and he'll do anything to get ahead. That's what you need to know.
Yeah. So to that end, he has hired seaQuest's ex-captain, Marilyn Stark, to destroy the seaQuest for some reason.
Well, that's what I kind of implied at the beginning of this, where we sort of learned she's a little bit, maybe unhinged is not the word. We learned she's a little bit aggressive and she's maybe impulsive. I don't know if you could go that quickly or it's that many steps to get from there to I'm now a villain who's going to murder innocent people for reasons.
Yeah, it's unclear what, his issue is that the world governments have started, policing their oceans to, secure resources for themselves, and he used to just, have free range to take them whenever he wanted as a private corporation, and he's mad about that. So blow up seaQuest. I'm like, I mean, there's 7 steps between how that helps you and what's happening. I don't and this is where my problem with the world building is there's this ideas that are dropped in, but then when you drop them into the plot, they're just they don't coalesce in any way, shape, or form.
Well, they do imply that seaQuest is sort of the be all and end all. It's the biggest, it's the most powerful, it's the best ship out there, and thus because of that, it is the biggest policing force. So I think there's some implication that if they get rid of it, they can kind of do what they want. I don't know if that justifies any sort of other behaviors, but I think that's what they're kind of getting at.
I guess so, but we saw at the beginning that every country apparently has warrior subs that they'll fly in to blow up any place that steals their stuff. So he has a billion seaQuest isn't the thing that's hampering him.
I don't know. It's bigger, Luke.
At any rate, Marilyn Stark will be commanding a Delta IV pirate sub along with LeShen's son for no apparent reason. There's just like, here's my son. He's got a ponytail. It's like, he's going to stand next to you the whole TV pilot. I'm like, but why? No reason.
It's funny you mention that because the only reason you would really want to do that is this son is very important to him. Maybe he's not ready to command a ship, but he's trying to show his father he's as strong or as competent. The son gets killed. Thus, this bad guy now has a real reason to hate Nathan and the seaQuest crew. But it's just like, is he there? It's like, yeah, he's there.
He's just there.
I know. It's weird why they do that. I don't know why. I think it's just like, he's got a ponytail. That's all you need to know.
But this is the message that seaQuest is hearing, because this Delta IV pirate sub has just attacked this power base, and seaQuest is being lured into an ambush, essentially.
That's right. Yeah.
And of course, as we've said, this goes on and on throughout the episode, but Bridger refuses to take command of the seaQuest when he's offered at this point. Like, Commander Ford's legitimately just like, listen, we're going to go into battle right now. You're the ranking officer technically on the ship. And he's like, I want to give you the opportunity right now to take command if you'd like to. And Bridger's just like, no way, dude. Not interested. Not going to happen. And Bridger's like, okay, well, I will keep command now. We're going to go there and we're going to have to fight this ship and do that. And Bridger's immediately like, I don't like your plan. I don't like it. I'm like, he just offered you the command and you said you didn't want it. Now you're going to second guess everything he says, like the second you turn it down?
Well, Luke, the point is, in the one scene, he's wearing his, like, casual outfit, which is, like, an open shirt with his, like, old man glasses hanging around his neck. But as soon as he puts on his turtleneck jumpsuit, you know it's serious. Nathan's in.
It was so annoying to me. It was just so annoying that he's just like, you want command? He's like, absolutely not at all. He's like, all right, well, I guess I'll have to make some decisions. Like, I disagree with all your decisions. I'm like, well, then just take command, Nathan. Don't do this.
Well, again, I think to my point, it didn't annoy me so much, but I felt like they added that sort of refusal maybe a beat too many times, whereas like, we know he's going to take command, so it just starts getting sillier and sillier the further along we get. And it didn't annoy me as much as it annoyed you, but it was just like, just get him in his turtleneck. Let's get him going.
Let's get it over with. We all know where this is headed.
Exactly.
At any rate, as they approach this sort of Delta sub, all these seaQuest systems start to crash due to a computer virus that was buried deep inside of its systems.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is sort of like, they've set up that the seaQuest is so big and powerful that it clearly would overpower this other sort of pirate ship, so they need to cripple it in some way, and that's what happens. It's basically like, its defense mechanisms are not in order, its munitions are not in order, so they're basically just a floating target.
Yeah, and as the Delta Force starts firing on them and landing a few hits, this is the moment when Commander Ford, as we mentioned earlier, he freezes up under the pressure. Like, it's just too much pressure. Yeah. He doesn't know what to do. And Bridger is finally forced to take command of the seaQuest. So what we've been waiting for the entire episode, he's forced to take command of the seaQuest. And he basically has the seaQuest dive so it gets so deep into the ocean that the Delta Force collapse depth is too high. It's basically, the pirate ship can't go down and follow them far enough down, so that's how they escape.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping they'd go down so low that pool that the dolphin is in, it just like, its head explodes. And he's like, oh, I didn't think about that.
And because these bad guys are just like, I think you nailed it on the head. They're like Steven Seagal level bad guys. We keep getting cutaways to the ship where they're just like, and I guess this is where the sun comes in. The sun's just like, Captain Stark, they're not firing back because they're crippled. Just shoot some more torpedoes. And she's like, no, I want to make them sweat a little more. It's like, they're diving. We need to shoot them before they get too far down. It's like, no, I want to make them feel like they're trapped down there. I could easily destroy them at any moment, which is my job, but I'm going to drag this out for no apparent reason.
Yeah, she's a classic like cartoon villain. Like, she's Skeletor or something. It's like, just do it now. It's like, no, I want to make them wait. It's like, you could cut Batman's head off right now. It's like, no, I think I'll tie him up and hang him over this pit of water. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it was so funny. I'm just like, all right, I get it. You guys did not want to write this pilot. I got
it. See, I don't think it's so much of that. I think it's where their focus was I think it was, we're going to introduce this cool ship, and we're going to introduce this dolphin, and we're going to introduce Roy Scheider and all these characters. Oh, and they need to do something this episode? Oh, I don't know. We'll just throw in some quick fill-ins. I think it's more that than than laziness. I think it's just like there's not enough content to warrant the hour and a half that they have, but they want this to be a big, spectacular pilot. So they're like, well, we'll just spend the first 45 minutes walking around the ship, introducing stuff. Whereas you could have cut that down to a tighter 45. And I think, not that the villains would have got better, but I think there would have been maybe more of a sense of propulsion of this plot.
Right. At any rate, well, after they escape, Ford takes Bridger aside, and he reveals to Bridger that Admiral Noyce, he knew all about a rebel sub that had been down in the ocean doing these things this whole time, and the entire plan was to bring Bridger down here because they knew they'd bump into the sub, and then that would make Bridger take command, but it's gone sideways because they didn't expect to, like, get beat by the sub. So somehow the bad guy's secret plan to destroy seaQuest was also known by Admiral Noyce, who is planning to use it to get Bridger to take command of the seaQuest.
Yeah, my note was, that makes no sense.
Not a fucking ounce of sense.
I know. There's too many beats. It's just like, you didn't need to have Ford have to act poorly to make Nathan take command if you also knew there was a ship under the ocean that was going to make him make command that you somehow know about that could stop, I guess, if you know about it, but you're going to wait because you're just looking to make a captain of a new ship. It's just like, okay, sure. See, a lot of this stuff, and maybe this is fair, maybe it's not. I was just like, okay, sure. Let's just allow this to keep it going. And it was like, this is just, it's 6 o'clock TV logic. So it didn't really bother me. It didn't make sense, but I was like, whatever, they want Nathan to be in charge of the ship. They're just, for me, it's too many beats, and so they sort of are tying themselves up in knots for no reason.
Yeah, and it's like, what's the point too? It's like, so Bridger now knows this was all a scam to get him to take command. He still takes command. He does not like it causes him to really question it at all.
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it's a little bit of like, you can't trust the bureaucracy. I don't know what message we're supposed to get from it.
At any rate, the Delta IV leaves because it's not going to wait for seaQuest to surface, which it easily could do, but it's not going to. It has to leave. It's got other things it's going to plan to do. And basically, Bridger and the seaQuest gives a chance them to lick their wounds. And what we find out is that a bunch of their systems were bricked because of this computer virus. And they're surprised to learn that the computer virus wasn't a, quote, organic computer virus, which I was just like, organic computer virus? I mean, putting aside the concept that it's not an organic system, let's just ignore that for a second.
By the way, I knew you were going to get frustrated with this.
A computer just gets a cold. It just gets a cold at random. It's fine. That's what computer viruses are.
Their like sort of technobabbles is not very good, and it just is funny that they say the thing. What I like better than this was when he pretty boy Lucas is his name, right?
That's right.
Lucas, I think. When he's sort of talking about this man-made virus, he's like, oh, and they've put like attack dogs around it, and what I liked about that was the attack dogs act like of some sort of coded protection system so you can't access the virus. The way they are like, well, we have to have the audience understand what I mean. Let's just have dog noises. So the dogs are barking. You could just hear the computer barking when he's trying to find the virus. And it made me laugh and laugh.
Yeah, it's a MIDI sound effect of dogs barking.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I was like, there's a point.
And they're able to figure out that this virus was planted so deep in the systems by old Captain Stark, old evil Captain Stark, who had planned this. I mean, here's my question. It's like, did she put this in while she was still in command? Because after she was relieved of duty, how would she have done this?
I think she did it on her way out.
But it would never have happened. She was relieved of duty. She wouldn't have access to the system.
She did it the day before.
So she had planned this. She knew at some point she was going to have to destroy the seaQuest.
Yeah. It's funny because they do this so that Nathan knows it's her, and he's like, oh, I used to teach her, and the teachers become the students or something. And I was like, but there's no purpose there's no reason for any of this, because it's not like he's like, oh, I know that she always does this, thus I'm going to do the other decision. It doesn't really work that way at all, but it's like, why did she have to be a student of his? Why did he have to be connected? They were just like, it won't make sense for her to be angry at seaQuest enough, so she's also angry at Nathan for reasons?
Well, that's what's so crazy. Is like, listen, they go through this whole thing. The old captain did it. When did she do it? Don't worry about it, even though it doesn't make any sense. And then as soon as they finish that, they're just like, Nathan's just like, I used to teach her. I'm like, what do you mean? Who cares? What does that matter? And you know what? Doesn't matter. Like, he says it like that.
I love how angry you are.
Well, he says it like that, and I'm just like, she doesn't even know you're on the ship. And like at some point, like they get on a communication together, and she's just like, oh, Nathan, I didn't know you were there. I'm like, yeah, no, none of this matters. He's just like, they get on a computer, she's like, well, my old student. She's like, what? Bridger, what are you doing there?
What they should have had is that when they did that screen and they like call each other and he's like, well. And she's like, who are you? He's like, I'm your old teacher. And she's like, I don't remember you at all. That's what they should have done. It's much funnier.
I do like when they do finally get in that phone call and she's just like, Bridger, what are you doing on the seaQuest? He's like, I'm going to stop you. She's just like, you won't. I know you're impotent. I'm like, excuse me?
That's true. She said you're impotent physically and like in your decisions or something to that effect.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
Yeah, it is funny though to be the characters. Imagine everyone's in the room and they're having this like real stand up. She's like, I also know you can't get it up, and it just like silent on the crew. And he's like, no, that's not it. I get very firm erections.
I'm quite elderly. Leave me alone.
Just ask Darwin.
No suit, skin.
Oh, see, you know what's funny, Luke? I'll just stop real quick. I know this is bothering you, and it's funny because we just came off a show where I think our roles were reversed because I was just furious with Forever Night. All this just made me laugh, and I thought it was so fun and silly. And I was just like, sure, he's also a teacher. Let's do it.
Anyway, there's also another problem they have. The power station is built on a volcanic vent. That's how it's drawing power.
Yeah.
And the venting cap on the station that's above the volcanic vent, it's tearing. And if they don't fix it, poisonous gas will break out and spill into the ocean and just kill all life for like hundreds of kilometers around the power station. So this is the other problem they have to deal with, in addition to the broken ship and the Delta 4 sub that's out there trying to get them. They've kind of got like all these problems mounting.
Well, it's actually one more too. It's not only that the ship is the pirate ship is attacking them. The pirate ship has also sailed away to attack a like underwater farming community.
Yeah, they'll get a call about that very shortly.
Yeah, so basically it's just up the tension again. I actually think again more than is needed, because I think it's already enough that you have this problem with the ship and there's this threat of attacking you as soon as you come up. But they're like, you know what we should also do? We're going to attack this farming community. And the reason I say it's too much is because you're left with that thing like, Nathan, what do you do? What's the decision? You know, he has to show he's a real captain. But like, there's no reason why they couldn't have, in the time it takes him to make his decision and, you know, solve one problem, they could have just destroyed the entire farming community. They should have just kept shooting it over and over and over. And they're like, well, you made your decision. You let all these people die because you did the other thing. But they sort of like, no, he can do everything.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, though. The idea is his back's up against the wall, and it's where he can get the chance to, like, come up with a solution. And his solution is, like, they can't fix this computer virus that's working their systems, so they're going to have to just work around it. And it leads to, like, a montage that's kind of fun in that we get to see, like, the weird technology the seaQuest is built out of. So we're seeing, like, tubes full of goo that they're cutting open and just spilling goo on the floor.
Yeah, I liked it.
He, like, opens up a panel and there's, like, clear plastic pogs that I think are supposed to be computer programs he's pulling out.
Yeah, their system runs on coffee coasters. I loved it.
It's quite the technology they've got on this ship. But at any rate, they do all these workarounds. They get the ship ready to go. They're getting these calls about the farming community under attack. And they're like, all right, let's do it. Let's go get the Delta 4 sub. And I was like, but what about that venting cap that was tearing? And they're like, oh, we're not talking about that anymore. I guess we poisoned the ocean. Bye.
It is funny. I thought maybe I missed it because they were just like, that's solved. I was like, oh, is it? Did you solve it?
They didn't even mention it again. They just said, this is going to happen. It's going to destroy all life under the ocean. And they're like, well, let's go. I'm like, yeah, what? Because Nathan makes a big deal about how it's like, we need to solve this problem first or it's going to be worse for everyone. I'm like, okay, well, do that. And he just was like, no, never mind.
I think they solved it off camera. I think they fixed it, Luke.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. We're sorry we brought it up.
I loved it.
It's such a mess. It's such a mess. But yes, they go. They confront the captain, Captain Stark of the Delta Force sub. And they're like, stand down, stop attacking the sea community. But, as we know, seaQuest is still in bad shape. They only have one missile they can fire, and they have no ability to, track it. They can shoot it, but they have no, targeting system for it. So they can just shoot it and hope they hit the sub. But thankfully, they do have Darwin the dolphin.
That's right. And I think the point of this is they sort of can't find the ships because their technology isn't quite working properly. So they go, well, what if we put a sort of homing beacon on the dolphin, have it swim, find the boat, stick it to the boat, thus we'll know where they are and we can target. That's the plan, right?
Yeah, essentially. Their target system's down, so if Darwin puts on a scuba suit so he can breathe underwater...
Yeah. And it's a robot, so don't worry.
Don't worry.
You can't. It has no soul. You can do anything you want to it.
Absolutely. There's no problem. No ethical issues at all. And Darwin the dolphin's going to swim out there. He uses his little bottlenose, and he attaches the little homing device to the side of the submarine and then swims away. And then they just shoot their old torpedo out the tube, hones in on that thing he attached to the ship. They shoot and destroy the Delta 4. They all have to abandon ship. I guess seaQuest collects some of the survivors, but where they're just like, Captain Stark, she escaped on a mini sub, so I'm sure she'll be back to give us trouble another day. And I was like, no, I don't think she will be. I doubt you'll see that character again.
No, I thought the same thing. It was weird that they were like, we saved a few people. I was like, why even bother saying that? You could even just said never mentioned it, and then later if you wanted her to come back, she'd be like, yeah, I escaped. I'd be like, okay, fair enough. It was weird they had that we saved some people. I'm like, well, why even tell us? Who cares?
It's because they wanted to let us know that Captain Stark, the evil captain, was still out there somewhere. I'm like, there's zero chance of you bringing this character back.
She's so far under the water, she swam away.
And then they cut to, this is what you said, they cut to the bad guy, Le Shen, and there's some guy walks in, he's like, the sub-song your son was on. And he's just like, huh. Okay, maybe I'll be back in another episode. I'm like, you won't be. Don't worry about it.
I loved it. It made me laugh because I didn't remember who he was. Because again, he hasn't been on screen in about 45 minutes.
At any rate, this all leads to the final scene of the episode in Bridger's birth. He's still hemming and hawing about whether he's going to take command permanently of seaQuest. This has been the whole premise of the episode. And he scanned his dead wife's photo to the hologram so he can look at her.
Yeah.
And the kid genius Lucas drops by to congratulate Bridger on a job well done. And, also to say, hey, who's that hottie? Who's that hottie? Your dead wife? She's so hot.
Yeah, that was weird, right? He's like, she's real beautiful. He's like, I know. I was like, I'd be like, she's dead, man. It's kind of inappropriate.
How'd you get her, sad. Man? You're so much older than she is.
It's true.
That's his real wife,
Is that right?
Yeah. Apparently she stands in for that all throughout the series.
Oh, that's sweet then.
And it's kind of nice. And they discuss Bridger's dilemma. He made a promise to his wife not to be involved in the Navy after their son died. But in the course of the adventure he's been on, he's come to recognize his best self is underwater as a commander. That's where he's his best self. So he's kind of torn. It's he made this promise, but also he's seeing he has a place here.
He's got a purpose.
And Lucas tells him a story that'll help him make his decision. He tells Bridger that his parents hate each other. They fight all the time. But they refuse to get a divorce because they got married, and marriage is a promise you have to keep. So you see, Captain Bridger, promises are dumb.
Yeah, I love it. It basically is he's like, I made this promise to my wife who died that I wouldn't do this thing. And then Lucas is like, yeah, well, what about this? Things change. And he's like, you know what? You convinced me. I loved it. I thought it was so funny because it was very much like what you would get at the end of, and I think we probably are going to talk about Star Trek Next Generation a lot in this, is that it's this sort of moral dilemma that when that show was kind of firing on all cylinders, the fourth, fifth season, they did very, very well, which was these conversations, and there's sort of this nuance to these moral quandaries we find ourselves in, and what is humanity and what should we be doing. And it should be that sort of conversation, but it just doesn't. work at all. So it's just like, he was like, yeah, I don't know. What if you didn't promise it? And he's like, you know what, kid? You're right. And I was like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, I know. It's so wild. Just like such a wild way to end that dilemma, which had been solved, I felt like, already. I didn't think he wasn't going to take command of that. But it was like, I promised my dead wife something. It's like, my parents hit each other.
Why they thought it needed so many beats when it would have been like a little bit jarring to have him like push up so much, and then the first time he becomes captain, but they do it so many times. It's like every single time he talks to him, he's like, I'm not gonna be captain. I'm like, well, you're just a hypocrite now, Nathan.
Yeah, it's so weird. But that's the end of the episode. Bridger is gonna take command of seaQuest.
Yeah,
the series can finally take off.
Yeah, and again, I know I'm gonna give it a higher score than you. I know I'm gonna be more forgiving. I think pilots, there's like room to grow. There's time to learn.
Oh, there's room to grow, my friend. Yeah, so much room.
And I think there's potential in the show. I know a little bit about the history of the show and what sort of happens and the changes that are going to happen in these episodes and seasons. I think there's a opportunity that the world presents. I think it's not the space that they want it to be, literally not space, but I think there's some interesting ideas you can play with here. Whether they're going to go in those directions, I'm not sure,
Yeah. Well, before we get into ratings, Jordan, you want to hear a little trivia about this episode?
I would love to.
This was the final directing credit for director Irvin Kershner, who directed Empire Strikes Back, Never Say Never Again, and RoboCop 2.
Wow. Some of that's okay.
This is his final show, his final directing.
Never Say Never Again. That was the Sean Connery unofficial Bond. RoboCop 2 is the one where they decided it was a great idea to for the next RoboCop to put a drug dealer's brain in it. I remember. Cinema classic.
I don't think I've ever seen RoboCop 2.
Yeah, it's not good. You know what's worse than it? RoboCop 3.
Oh, something to look forward to. All right, Jordan. Should we get into ratings?
Yeah, and again, I'm gonna look. I'll tell you right off the bat. I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10. Is it a 7? I don't know. I had a good time. I'm hopeful for the show. I'm hoping that I'm going to just kind of turn my brain off and just have a fun time under the ocean in these adventures. I'm not sure if that's what the show is going to be. So in that sense, I'm just I think it's kind of fun, and I'm hoping it's going to stay fun. I think if it gets too bogged down in being serious, it will lose me, or if it gets too zany. But if it could kind of thread that needle, I think I'll have a good time. So I'm going to give it a 7. I thought it was a funny little pilot.
It's funny. I kept thinking about the Sliders pilot as I watched this, which is like...
I did too.
A pilot that was rewritten quite clearly a lot and was like a very tightly paced and like plotted 2-hour movie for TV, basically. Mm-hmm. And watching this, I was just like, this is the most mercenary, like some boardroom people sat down and said, we need Star Trek The Next Generation. Give us all the same characters. It's going to be under the water this time. And we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what it's about. So I guess there's these two bad guys. I don't know. They're like not very thought through. We want, like, understood the plot points they wanted, had no idea how to integrate them, did not understand the world they all existed in, and just kind of like force someone to write it and just be like, hopefully this is a TV show. And it's not. It's a 3.
Oh, wow.
Watching this, I was just like, this is awful. This is like such corporate nothing.
See, I don't even know if I don't really disagree with that. I just think, I don't know, I just didn't take it so seriously. I just thought this is just a fun thing that's on TV.
To me, it didn't feel like there was a person who created this who cared about it. Like it felt like nobody had this idea. Like it felt like someone rolled some dice in a room and this is what came out. Like it didn't feel like there was any passion behind it, any thought behind it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell from a pilot. We kind of both felt differently about it, so I'm curious to know what the future episodes are. If it's going to have those same restraints like you feel, like it's going to be aimless, or if it's going to be something where it's like an adventure monster of the week. I don't know what it's going to be.
I mean, I think it could get better. Like, it can't get worse anyway. But, like, it's just a pilot that's just, like, nobody asked for quite clearly and that, like, nobody really cared that much to make. But it's, like, it's people like Star Trek. But, theoretically, you should be able to do something with that going forward. I think maybe just because nobody cared, it was hard to make the pilot of it because you have to introduce everything and you barely thought it through. But maybe once it gets into actual, like, standalone episodes, at least then you can put aside all that like weird junk and just be like, now we're just on adventures under the sea. That was the whole premise.
I don't know. But you did see that there was a dolphin character, right? Did you miss that?
Yeah, that's what's getting 3.
Fair enough.
But that's it. That's all for our first adventure with seaQuest. I'm shocked by what I saw.
Yeah, I'm silly. I'm hopeful. I really am hopeful, and I've been burned many times in the past by these shows. Even you mentioned Sliders. The quality starts dropping real quick. I'm hoping this is a good first season. We'll see what happens. I like Roy Scheider,
I mean, here's the thing. Even that's a good example of Sliders. Like, at least with Sliders, you can see somebody created it and felt passionate about it, even if they weren't able to execute. I just don't feel like anyone involved in seaQuest is all that passionate about the idea. Like, it doesn't feel like a show that anyone had an idea for. They're just like, we need something that can go up against TNG.
Maybe you're right. I'm not sure.
At any rate, we're doing something called bonus episodes for charity. So as we mentioned, we're doing only best of run of seaQuest. We're not going to watch all the episodes. We're going to jump through a few, 3 a season. So we're going to miss a lot of episodes of seaQuest.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're going to watch the best ones, but we might not watch the best one that you think is the best.
Yeah, and we talked off the air. I think this show is going to go through some big changes. So I think we're going to be like whipping our head back. Like, what just happened? Who's this person?
Yeah. As it's perpetually retooled because it has no concept of what it is, we're going to miss a lot of things. But if you, the listener, are just like, I really need these two for whatever reason to go back and cover one of these episodes, I think they'll enjoy it, or I think they'll hate it and I want to see them suffer. Whatever your purposes are, we can't, we don't know what you want. Mm-hmm. You can donate some money to some charities that were selected by past guests, and we'll go back and watch an episode of your choosing from a show that either we're doing a best of run, so we've missed some of the episodes from that show, or some of the older shows we've watched where we've taken the escape pod and not finished the series, like Freaky Links or a... what's another one we've skipped through? I'm sure there's quite a few, actually. Misfits of Science, maybe.
Oh, yeah, Misfits of Science. Yeah.
You can get all the details at our website, continuumdrag.podbean.com, or if you go to social media, there's links to the bonus episodes for charities initiative there. But that's a way for you to get yourself a little bonus episode and make a donation to charity. It's a win-win, really. There's no losses here. But find out all about that by going there. And if you have any questions, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com, and we can explain how it works and answer any questions you have before you do your donations. But that's bonus episodes for charity. Other than that, you're going to go to our social media this week. We're going to have clips from seaQuest. Obviously, there's robot dolphins. There's like early 90s CG. There's hologram mist men. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah. There's a waterfall replica thing. Waterfall. What do you call it?
Waterfall replica thing.
Forget I said anything.
You'll see that for sure.
Yeah, you'll see the watercolor replica.
You can find that at Continuum Drag is the handle. That's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. But that wraps it up for this week. So, listener, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, I'll see you next week.
How would the dolphin say goodbye? What do he sound like? He's like, goodbye. That's a dolphin voice, right?
I'm trying to think it through because you have to break all the sentences down into like snippets, like smooth rocks. Like that's how we talk.
Bye.
Next week, see you.
That's it.
There we go. I hate you, Jordan.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.